don't just want the news, they want the truth. What others hide, I bring to you with evidence. Politics, corruption, human rights. No filters, no fear, just facts. I don't stop until the system shakes. This is Trending Daily and I'm Makhdoom Shahabuddin. Tonight we are discussing two interconnected geopolitical fault lines that are reshaping the strategic balance of South Asia and the wider region. One revolves around water, the lifeline of millions, as Pakistan warns India over its actions concerning the Indus River system. The other centers on energy, as the Strait of Hormuz crisis threatens to expose the deep vulnerabilities in India's energy security architecture. Let us begin with water. A new and serious chapter of tensions is unfolding in South Asia, and this time the conflict is not about borders, not about rhetoric, but it is about rivers. Pakistan has formally raised grave concerns over India's expanding water storage projects and its unilateral announcement to suspend the Indus Waters Treaty. Officials in Islamabad have warned that New Delhi's actions are not only legally questionable but also strategically destabilizing for the entire region. At the heart of this dispute lies the historic Indus Waters Treaty, signed in 1960 and brokered by the World Bank. For more than 6 decades, this treaty regulated the use of Indus water system between Pakistan and India. It allocated the 3 eastern rivers to India and the 3 western rivers, Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, primarily to Pakistan, while granting India limited, clearly defined usage rights on the western rivers. What makes this treaty extraordinary is not just its technical design, but its resilience. Even during the Indo-Pakistani War of 1965, when open hostilities erupted, the treaty survived. Payments continued, technical exchanges continued. Both sides recognized that water is too critical to weaponize. However, the political climate has changed dramatically. In April 2025, the government led by Narendra Modi announced the suspension of Indus Waters Treaty following the Pahalgam terrorist attack. This unilateral decision triggered immediate alarm in Islamabad. Pakistani officials and legal experts warned that suspending an internationally guaranteed treaty sets a dangerous precedent and undermines the sanctity of binding agreements. Pakistan's concerns are not abstract. They are deeply practical. India has announced plans to expand water storage capacity on rivers flowing from Kashmir and Punjab, particularly the Indus River, the Jhelum River and the Chenab River. Under the treaty, India's ability to build storage facilities on the western rivers is tightly regulated. There are caps, designs, specifications and mandatory data sharing requirements. But if India claims the treaty is suspended, then what constrains those limits? That is the fundamental question. For Pakistan, a downstream state, geography is destiny. The Indus Basin is the backbone of Pakistan's agriculture. Millions of farmers depend on predictable seasonal flows. Wheat, rice, cotton and sugarcane production all rely on this river system. Any large-scale upstream increase in water storage capacity could theoretically allow manipulation of seasonal flows. Water could be withheld during critical sowing seasons, or sudden release during monsoon months could accelerate the flooding downstream. Even the perception of such capability creates instability in planning, pricing and food security. This is why Pakistan's response has been firm. Chief of Defense Forces Field Marshal Asim Munir has issued a clear warning. Pakistan will not allow any attempt to block, divert or manipulate its rivers. He emphasized that the Indus Basin is a shared natural system and that any construction of dams or reservoirs that violate Pakistan's rights under the treaty framework face a serious response. This is not escalation for the sake of rhetoric. It is a message of deterrence. Critics of India's current posture argue that during Prime Minister Modi's tenure, New Delhi has increasingly tested the boundaries of bilateral agreements and international norms, whether on constitutional changes in disputed territories or now with water governance. The patron appears more assertive and less consultative. Turning water into a geopolitical lever in a nuclearized region is a dangerous gamble. At the same time, Pakistani analysts stress that the ultimate solution cannot be military. Pakistan's downstream geography means that diplomacy, legal mechanisms and international engagement remains the most effective tools. Islamabad can engage the World Bank as a guarantor, raise the issue in international forums and mobilize global opinion around the water sharing agreements. Water is not just a strategic asset. It is a humanitarian necessity. The message from Pakistan's leadership is clear. Water security instability is national security. Any attempt to undermine Pakistan's rights under the Indus system will not go unanswered, but Pakistan prefers law over chaos, agreements over unilateralism, and diplomacy over destabilization. Now let us shift to the second major fault line, energy. As tensions escalate in the Middle East, the Strait of Hormuz has once again emerged as one of the most critical choke points in global trade. Recent drone attacks on key facilities in Ras Laban Industrial City and Masad Industrial City forced Qatar Energy to temporarily halt liquefied natural gas production. This disruption sent shockwaves through global energy markets. Natural gas prices surged dramatically. The European benchmark Dutch TTF contract jumped more than 30% within days. But while Europe is feeling the price shock, analysts warn that India may face even more severe consequences. Why? Because India is the world's fourth largest importer of liquefied natural gas and relies heavily on shipments from the Gulf region. Much of this energy passes through the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow maritime corridor through which nearly one-third of world's seaborne oil and a substantial portion of global LNG shipments transit. If tensions escalate further and the Strait of Hormuz becomes restricted or blocked, which it is right now, the consequences for India could be devastating. Indian energy companies are already bracing for impact. A company has reportedly warned domestic stakeholders about lower deliveries. GAIL India Limited and Indian Oil Corporation have informed industrial customers that supply reductions ranging from 10 to 30%. These cuts are tactical. They aim to protect companies from penalties under long-term contracts while the alternative supplies are sought. But alternatives are expensive. Spot market LNG prices have surged, shipping costs have risen, insurance premiums for tankers navigating conflict-prone waters have climbed sharply. India now faces the prospect of competing with Europe and East Asia for limited cargoes at inflated prices. The structural vulnerability is clear. India is one of the largest buyers of LNG from the Gulf, including from the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company and Qatar. With Qatar accounting for roughly 20% of global LNG exports, even temporary disruptions have immediate ripple effects. If the Strait of Hormuz were to even close temporarily, tankers carrying LNG and crude oil from Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and other Gulf producers would be unable to reach Indian ports. This would tighten supply instantly. The consequences would have a direct impact on India's economy. Higher gas prices would increase electricity generation costs. Fertilizer production would become more expensive, affecting agriculture, steel, petrochemicals, and manufacturing sectors would face input cost pressures. Inflation would rise, industrial output could slow, the trade deficit could widen as more foreign exchange is spent on costly energy imports. This crisis highlights a strategic vulnerability in India's energy security model. Heavy dependence on Middle Eastern routes means that regional instability translates directly into domestic economic stress. Meanwhile, the broader geopolitical conflict continues to intensify. Escalatory cycles in West Asia keep maritime routes on edge. Every drone strike, every missile launch, every naval maneuver increases insurance premiums and market anxiety. For Pakistan, the lesson is equally important. Regional instability affects all economies. Energy markets are interconnected. Water disputes are interconnected. Security crises do not remain confined within borders. Pakistan's approach must remain strategic, calm, and principled. On water, it must defend its treaty rights firmly, but through legal and diplomatic channels. On regional instability, it must continue advocating de-escalation while safeguarding its own energy and economic interests. We stand against the weaponization of natural resources, whether it is water in South Asia or energy routes in West Asia. Turning lifelines into leverage creates long-term instability. The coming months will be critical. Will India reconsider its unilateral suspension of historic treaty framework? Will the Strait of Hormuz remain open and secure? Will global power step back from escalation? One thing is certain. In a region already burdened with history, miscalculation is a luxury no state can afford. Pakistan's position is clear. International agreements must be respected, sovereignty must be protected, and natural resources that sustain millions should never be turned into instruments of coercion. You are watching Trending Daily. This is your host Makhdoom Shahabuddin. See you in the next episode.